Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. We're going to start our presentation on self-care for caregivers. My name is Liz Rippey. I'm a social worker with New England Hospice. Been working with New England Hospice for the last 10 years. I'm happy to be here today. Should anyone have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me via email. Our contact number is down here at the under my name. You can always call the office and ask actually anyone for any information at any time, whether you are a current hospice getting service from our hospice or not. You could be, we give information to the public all the time. So anyone needing information is welcome to call, email, and ask. So I think today's topic is a really good topic because more than ever during this time, we need to make sure that we are really taking care of ourselves, and not just caregivers, but everyone in general, our neighbors, our friends, ourselves. So I think this is a really good topic for today's climate, especially, but we are going to be talking about caregivers more specifically. So we're going to dive right into that. All right. Okay, and just please forgive me about the slides. We will, all right. So I found this little graphic to begin with, just to kind of jump into our topic today. It says me time. Oh yes, thanks for reminding me. It's number 52 on my to-do list. In parentheses, I am a caregiver. I thought that this was just very accurate to what a caregiver kind of goes through. More often than not, caregivers will have 1,000 things to do. And then the list keeps growing. So I just thought that this was just a really interesting graphic just to kind of jump into about how busy caregivers can be, how long the list can get, and a reminder that it's okay. It is a long list, and we're going to find out ways to help you with that list, hopefully today. Okay, so we're going to jump into what is caregiver stress. And as we see, I just wrote a little, just moving my face here so I can see what I wrote. Caregiver stress is the physical and emotional strain experienced by individuals who care for others who often have a long-term or chronic illness. So today, what I'm categorizing as caregivers is those really caregiving for possibly an older adult or a friend, more on the long-term basis. Now, I would consider anyone caring for a neighbor doing their lawn or caring for our children. You know, all those categories can put you into a caregiver position. I think probably caregive someone every day, our spouses, our families. So really today we're focused on caregiving for long-term and chronic illnesses. Other names that you might be familiar with are compassion fatigue, caregiver burnout, caregiver stress syndrome. They're all the same. They're in terms of fatigue, burnout, and stress syndrome, but they're all explaining the same thing, which is the physical and emotional strain experienced by individuals who are caring for someone on the long term. So we might hear that in the caring for a loved one at home, healthcare workers for facility settings, like nursing homes, assisted living facilities, old age homes, things like that, those types of settings, hospitals, even short-term care facilities can still be caregiver stress provoking. You might caregiver burnout, you hear that term a lot in the professional setting. So it can really be generalized to anyone caring for that, for someone in those types of settings too. So over on the right-hand side, I put a number of causes. Now, this isn't the end-all be-all list, but I just thought this was just a short list that we could kind of run through to explain some of. And when we're talking about caring for maybe an older population, these probably fit that a little bit better. And the first one you can see is role reversal. And what we're talking about is when we are caring for most likely an aging parent as a grown adult, as an adult child, you're caring for an aging parent, and you're going to start to see your roles reverse, where mom and dad used to take care of you, and now you're taking care of mom and dad. So feeling on call all the time. Lots of caregivers, and we'll touch lots of these. This information will kind of meld into some of the other slides too, so you might hear a little redundancy, but it kind of all fits together. So feeling on call all the time, caregivers that actually live with the person they're caregiving for might feel this, especially because there really aren't a lot of boundaries between yourself and the person you're caregiving, where you'll see at work in a professional healthcare setting, you'll actually start to see, I mean, you'll be able to, clock out at 5 essentially is the idea, is clock out at 5, and then go home and try to regroup and, refresh for the next day's work. When you live with someone you're caring for, that's 24/7. That's, you really don't get a time to just clock out and clock in. So that feeling on call can be a big cause for caregiver stress. Unable to prioritize your interests or obligations, and that could be just your normal hobbies that you like to do, going out with friends, obligations such as even going to the doctor's appointments you might not be able to get to, kind of neglecting your own self-care. Financial pressures, lots of us are still working. Retirement age isn't necessarily at 65 anymore, so a lot of us are still working many years past that. We have homes, we have children, maybe they're in college, or, we've got to buy food, we've got, a number of things that we're all just trying to do. So sometimes caring for someone kind of adds that additional stress financially. Small or no support system. Now this could be just limited in terms of you're an only child, or your neighbor who doesn't have children, relies on you for everything, and you don't know who to reach out to, or you do have a lot of support, but they're not in state. That could be the issue too. And then at the bottom, I put COVID-19. I actually just threw that on last minute. I actually think this is a really big cause for additional stress that is unknown to us, really, and we're still kind of going through it as we're, going into the fall, and we really are trying to find information on how COVID-19 is affecting all of us as we just move through life. And caregivers, how does COVID-19 play on caregiver stress? So that's a big cause there too. So caregiver stress. We're going to move on to, created a little, I didn't create it. The CDC created it. I just cut and pasted this infographic that I found on the CDC website. So anyone looking for information, I actually have resources, links at the end of the presentation. Again, please feel free to reach out to our organization for any type of information. I can email you a lot of links, and reach out, can find information in your community as well. But I found this caregiving infographic on collected data from 2015 to 2018. And I want to apologize because I couldn't find the exact number of participants that they studied. So I couldn't get a core base of numbers that they were pulling the percentages out of. But I just think that it kind of gives you an idea of kind of a bit of information that caregivers represent. So as you can see, 1 in 5 adults are caregivers. And if we go right below that, caregiving can be lengthy and intense. About half have provided care for at least 2 years. So when we're talking about that long-term part, 2 years is a hefty amount of time. Sorry, excuse me. So that's a lot. And when we're talking about intensity, almost 1/3 have provided care for at least 20 hours per week. So that, if you really think about that, that's a part-time job for most people. on top of maybe their full-time job, or taking full-time job and taking kids, or maybe running a household, or just again doing your daily things that do take up time. And then so what you're asking yourself is to what can you give up? And sometimes that can be a lot that you don't even realize. Your own health, your own happiness. Sometimes we think we have to give up certain things in order to caregive, and that's actually not true. It's just learning how to create boundaries and good coping techniques to do everything that we want to do, and creating those boundaries. So if we look back down here, how do caregivers help? So nearly 80% manage household tasks. 80% household tasks, that's a lot. And so household tasks can be, imagine what you do at home, all the little stuff that you don't even realize you're doing daily just to make sure your house is clean and kept up and neat and tidy. Doing the dishes, wiping down the counters, sweeping, dusting, doing your laundry, folding that laundry then. It could be yard work. And then on top of that, making sure the fridge is stocked with food and your bills are being paid and you're getting the mail from the street. So all of that actually adds up. And all those little things are stuff that caregivers do. On top of that, over 50% assist with personal care. And that can be quite laboring as well. Think about how often we take for granted how we get in and out of the shower so easily when we have an aging parent or a loved one that can't move as fast or has limited health issues or mobility issues. We're moving at a much slower pace. We're being very cautious. And that can be also quite laboring if you are one person who is helping someone who needs help with getting in and out of the shower and things like that. And that can be quite laboring. So it's a lot of physical work too. So who are our caregivers? 58% are women, which is probably not as shocking to some folks that women are typical caregivers. 19% are 65 years or older, which means that 19% are caring for those that are already 65 years or older. 1 in 3 are caring for a parent or parent-in-law. So what I said before too is for this presentation conversation, we're really kind of looking at caring for older adults, and most of those would be like our parents and things like that, and folks like that. 9% are providing care to someone with dementia. So if we're talking about 65 years or older, unfortunately, we are going to start to see folks afflicted with a dementia or Alzheimer's type of illness, cognitive type of illness, that would require more caregiving type activities, lots of queuing, lots of stuff like that. So future caregivers, 1 in 6 non-caregivers expect to become caregivers within 2 years. So that's kind of interesting to think about too. One of us in 6 are going to be caregivers within 2 years. So lots of us. So yep, you can find this on the CDC website. There's a lot of information there on aging, caregiving. Most of us have probably gone there already because we're looking at COVID stats. So we're all probably a little too familiar with the CDC website. So we're gonna move on. We're talking about risk factors. So when we talk about risk factors, we're gonna run down this short list, and then we'll go from there. So living with the person you're caring for. So I think I actually just said this too, someone that you're living with and not being able to clock in and clock out, because when you're living with someone, there is no, you are on call kind of 24/7. In the middle of the night, there is no, you don't clock out at 5 and then clock in at 8, unfortunately. So you are on call, that on-call type feeling that we've talked about in the very beginning can be present. So lack of choice in being a caregiver. And again, that could be just because you're an only child, or your siblings live out of state, or again, you're caring for an elderly neighbor who didn't have children or has limited family resources themselves. Financial strain, we kind of already touched upon as well. Having, paying for education, keeping up with your own mortgage, household bills, things like that. and then trying to care for your loved one at home. Typically, when you're doing caregiving at home, you're providing what you would how a professional would care for someone in a facility settings, but you are doing that care, and that means you might have to take a cut in pay at work because you only work part time at work, to take care of someone at home. So that's, that can be strain creating. Having kind of depression or anxiety or other pre-existing mental health issues. I think this is really important, especially in today's world where it's very anxiety provoking for anyone, even if anxiety has never been an issue for you. I think knowing that we have these mental health issues, or just knowing yourself, and taking stock in the fact that we need to be mentally prepared to care for someone going into our caregiver role is very important. Knowing that you are at risk for that type of exacerbation can be really helpful for the future if you're aware of that. But some folks they kind of dive in, and which is fine. But just knowing that you're prone, or you already have these pre-existing conditions, can be really helpful in the future. And again, we're going to talk about how we can help prevent some of these, prevent caregiver stress. Social isolation, again, because of COVID, we've all experienced some type of social isolation in the past 9 months, which is can be very, very stressful, even when you're not caregiving. So that's a risk. Number of hours spent caregiving. The infographic that we just saw said about 20%. 20 hours. And again, that to me is a part-time job. In and of it, standing alone is a part-time job for 20 hours on top of probably what you do at your full-time job, caring for kids or whatnot. Challenging family dynamics. So I know that we know all families are different. All families come with their own type of challenges. And so when we're talking about challenging family dynamics as a risk factor for caregiver burnout, that could mean a couple of things. A couple of examples would be siblings not agreeing on the course of plan for, let's just say it's mom and dad. Your sister doesn't agree with how you're caregiving for mom, but you're in charge. That can create friction. Or you do have loved ones that, or your siblings aren't taking, so sometimes we hear that caregiver siblings don't, the time caregiving isn't equal across all loved ones, all caregivers. One might spend more time rather than the other, or because sibling A doesn't have any children and sibling B has a couple of children, sibling B might expect more caregiving from sibling A, when in reality, maybe it needs to be more fair and even balanced. So that can certainly create some challenging dynamics to your caregiver role, for sure. All right, risks. We talked about risks. I'm going to jump on to slide to talk about the signs of caregiver stress. Oops, sorry. Jumping here. All right, signs of caregiver stress. So there's a long list of signs. It's not all of the signs. You might have other things that you've experienced that aren't on here, and that's completely okay. These are just a few examples of what you might be, you might not even be aware of. I think it's really important. We'll run down the list. I think it's really important. One of the first signs in helping yourself when you start to experience some of these symptoms and signs is recognizing the signs. So when we're aware of that, we can stop this sort of cycle, this little cycle that keeps happening, where we know we're prone to anxiety, and then we fall into some of these symptoms and signs, and then we start to have these feelings, and then we kind of wrap ourselves up in this cycle that we can't kind of jump out of. So and we'll get to prevention, and I think in one of the next slides. So Signs of caregiver stress. So we've got weight fluctuation, which can be gaining and losing weight, or gaining and or losing weight. Sadness and depression, unusual sleep patterns, sleeping too much, wanting to sleep too much, not sleeping enough. Um, Alcohol and drug abuse, how we are self-medicating or how much we've used before and now we're using now. Bodily pain, like aches and pains when we're feeling run down and not great, exhaustion, irritability, and anger, like mood changes. It could be a lot of these things could be very subtle over time, and you might not, I mean, most of us will probably not even be aware. Someone might come up to you someday and just say, you don't seem like yourself, I don't see the same person. A good friend might just say something to you that make you click, something clicks, and then you're thinking, wow, yeah, this is something has changed. My personality has changed. I'm not, experiencing a lot of these things. Feelings of overwhelmed, being overwhelmed, loss of interest, and an inability to make decisions. I think the inability to make decisions is a big one, because you could be the most type A, get it done type of person, have a list, non-procrastinator. And when you are feeling very overwhelmed and inundated with a lot of things going on in your life, even making a simple decision to go to dinner or what I want to wear in the morning can be a really daunting type of decision to make, because you just have so much more in your brain. You really can't take anything more. So I think when we recognize that we're actually experiencing these types of physical or emotional symptoms and signs, we can start to kind of help ourselves get through it. It's definitely not easy. Again, someone might have to point it out to us, or we could be experiencing this for quite a while before we understand what's going on. But I think it's very important that we try to recognize these signs and symptoms, not only for yourself, but the person you're caregiving for as well. Their health and their emotional stability is just as important as ours. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because if we're not, we are really unable to take care of other people. And I think that we really forget that part. We have to kind of step back sometimes, and that's completely okay. And again, so jumping to the next slide, where feelings among caregivers, again, allowing ourselves to recognize and feel is huge when we're trying to help ourselves kind of get again out of that loop. So long list here. I don't need to go through all of it, but a lot of associated feelings when we're experiencing those symptoms of burnout, fatigue, and just exhaustion, and all of these: anxiety, guilt, stress, resentment, grief, frustration. They really all start to kind of boil over. And again, the important thing is that we acknowledge that they're there, and that we are allowed to feel them, and that it's okay to have these feelings. So I think a lot of us think that we have to be superheroes, and that's not the case at all. We're humans, and although what we're doing as caregivers is quite heroic, very, very great thing that we do for our loved ones, because they are our loved ones, and we want to do it. We want to be engaged. But we might then feel guilt that I wanted to go out with girlfriends and I have to take care of mom, and no one else is taking care of her. My siblings are just living their own lives, and they get to have their own hobbies, and I'm exhausted. And so it's okay to feel that. I think a lot of us think that we should not feel that. And when we do, we feel like failures, or we're doing something wrong, which is, again, not the case. Because with all of these feelings does come fulfillment, love, and satisfaction here on the right side at the very end. So we can feel guilt and resentment and stress, but also feel fulfillment, love, and satisfaction. And it's a hard balance. it's a hard, it's very hard to say, how can I have all this resentment and still feel all this fulfillment? And it's a balance that we have to try to create for ourselves through the timeline that we're caregiving. Caregiving can be, it's really kind of a lifetime depending on how you want to look at it. But when you're caregiving, I mean, we're all built as caregivers as a human population. But when you're doing it intensively with someone, maybe as like a parent at home, we do have to find that healthy balance. And it doesn't come with a handbook. We're not thrown a handbook, just like when you become new parents, you're not thrown a handbook to say, these are all the magic tips that you're going to need. You kind of learn as you go, and that's completely okay. I think a lot of what we need to do is ask for help and accept that we really can't, it's not a one person job. So remember, if you're experiencing any of these, that's okay. But the next step would be asking for help. I might be stuck on this slide. Just give me 1 second. Oh, I just jumped ahead many slides. Okay, we're going to be on preventing burnout. Oh, I just did it again. Okay, preventing burnout. We just talked about all of our feelings. So right here on the right-hand side, I did just add this little picture that I found on agingcare.com. There's so much out there on the web, on the internet that you can find. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, it's probably not a bad rabbit hole to go down. You're going to find so much information, and chances are going to find so many others that are in the same boat as you that have a lot of good tips and examples and ideas to help manage your caregiver burnout and stress. Life as a caregiver, letting go of guilt doesn't mean you're uncaring or unkind. It just means that you're allowing yourself some freedom, which is what I kind of just said, accepting it, acknowledging it, accepting it, letting it go, and moving forward. Again, the best thing that you could do for yourself. I know that's not easy, definitely not easy. It's a learning process as we go along. So, but trying to give yourself permission is one of the first steps. So preventing burnout, lots of stuff that we can do. Again, not always easy, but again, making those baby steps can go a long way to helping you in the long term of your caregiver role. Really caring, we'll go down the list. So caring for yourself, making sure that you're physically supported. So going to your doctor's appointments, like a dentist, even eye doctor, making sure that you're physically able to do it, because when you're not physically able to and emotionally, you're not going to be able to care for that loved one. Getting away, stepping back, support groups. Again, if you want to just jump on the internet, there's a ton of information, support out there, talking with friends. We all think that our friends probably don't want to hear our troubles and woes, but your friends and some family members are going to want to know how you're doing. And when they ask, let them know how you're doing. And they're asking for a reason. Engaging in your hobbies again. Hobbies can be just even reading a chapter a night. Maybe you're a big reader and you feel like you can't even absorb information anymore. Making time for yourself in those hobbies again. Religion is a big one. Leaning on your religion, regaining your faith, leaning on your faith, respite care, finding respite care, like adult day facilities can be considered, and in-home assistance, all kind of respite care, if you will. Meditation. And again, what I've kind of been driving home is asking for help. Something that I think that we're not necessarily great at as a society in the US, but something that is nothing abnormal to do. I think normalizing that is something that we need to do more of. So these are all types of ways. Again, we realize that it's not just an overnight type of correction that you can just magically do and then you'll feel this instant relief. It is kind of an ongoing process. And again, making sure that you're renewing yourself when you do have those bad days, or weeks on end that you don't feel like you've had a break, and then kind of stopping and like looking and processing what you need for the long run. So just like training for a marathon, you know, you're really going months on end and working on yourself and saying, what can I do better? What can I work on? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Okay, who can I ask for advice, training advice, or things like that? So you're going to want to lean on others because it takes more than just yourself sometimes. Preventing burnout. Another way we can prevent burnout, again, I'm stuck on this slide. Preparing for the holidays, which I think this is a great segue because we are actually preparing for the holidays right now, right before Thanksgiving. Even pre-COVID, we know how stressful the holidays can be, and then adding on caregiver responsibilities when you have all these other things probably going on in your life as well. So just a couple of things here that we can kind of go through. Planning ahead. If you have any types of activities that you like to do during the holidays, just try maybe getting a jump on them before the holidays, before you kind of have to get into everything, and then planning as you go, and then getting caught up in it all. Planning is a huge, even when you're not caregiving, planning is a huge stress reliever for the long haul. Self-care, all the things that we talked about on the last slide. Preparing your loved one, so that could be just preparing the person you're caring for, that the holidays might look a little different, and that's okay. Preparing your family, maybe those that do help to caregive, maybe you need a break, you're going out of town. I think travel wisely is on here too, making plans to have respite care, to have other types of services, or you're going to send someone to a short-term rehab or a respite care facility just for a couple of days or a week or something like that, so you can travel. Involving everyone in activities. Communication, huge. Allowing yourself to have a voice is very important. Smart gift giving, because we know how stressful gift giving can be. Even though the idea is such a wonderful thing to do for our loved ones, it really can be sort of stressful. So again, allowing yourself not to get too caught up in it if you can't have that, if you don't have the mental capacity to go out and shop for hours. And today we're not really going out to the store to do that. We're doing everything online, which might be actually a lot easier. So that could be really helpful for some folks. So safe home environment. That could really be, when I take safe home environment to be, is especially in New England with the weather, making sure that we have plans for our loved ones to get in and out of their homes safely during the holidays or during the winter months. And that could be like snow removal, who's shoveling, because again, caregiving could be those 80% is those household tasks, and a lot of that's like lawn care and upkeep of the house, which could be taking care of the walkways and things like that, or even making sure the smoke detectors work, the CO2 detectors work, especially if during the winters when we have the windows shut and things like that. We want to make sure that all of that is in place. Finding sources of support, again, another way to prevent and help yourself through kind of any part of the caregiving process, not just during the holidays. And when your loved one lives in a facility, so we're really talking about a loved one at home. And I probably should have mentioned this in the very beginning, because lots of our patients at New England Hospice do reside in nursing home facilities. So I apologize I didn't address this in the beginning. But just because your loved one lives in a different facility setting, just like if your loved one lived in their own home and you have your own home and you're going to them to help caregive, caregiving doesn't actually have to be physical care. Caregiving can be a large part of the advocating for the care, the emotional part of the care. So that is just as important and valid as the laboring side of some maybe physically helping someone get in and out of the shower or out of their chair, things like that. So I think that's really important to know, that just because you are not providing the physical care does not mean you are not a caregiver. You are just as much as a caregiver as someone in a facility member or where your loved one is. So that emotional, so everything that we've been talking about still applies wherever your loved one lives, whether that be with you at home, their own home down the street, 2 states away, or in a facility setting. So very important to remember. And I apologize I didn't say that in the beginning. So anyone experiencing some stress for the holidays, you can contact us, and I'm happy to help. The holidays are going to look very different for everyone this year, so we're all in it together. So this is I think one of the last slides, and I just kind of found this, not even realizing what I had found, which I thought was really interesting, is a caregiver bill of rights. Now, let's first reflect on maybe the entirety, because I think what I've been trying to drill home is exactly what this quote says: if you don't take care of yourself, who will be there to take care of your loved one? And again, that goes to both physical and emotional abilities, your physical and emotional ability to take for yourself. Are you feeling emotionally stable? Are you feeling ready? Are you physically capable to take on this role? And again, no matter where your loved one is, you're still in it, you're still engaged in their care. So you are still a caregiver, but we really do need to step back as caregivers, because we really need to reflect on how we're taking care of ourselves going into it. Just like a job, when when we go for a job interview, and lots of times employers are going to say, how are you, you work in a very stressful environment. When you go home, how are you taking care of yourselves? Because they want to know that when you come to work, that you're going to be able to emotionally and physically care for the people that you're caring for. So just like us as caregivers, we have to work on ourselves. Healthcare workers, we have to take care of ourselves every single day. We're being extremely mindful of that. And that, again, is through our hobbies, through our loved ones, through professional care, and just being and recognizing that as well. And it ebbs and flows too throughout each year, or however long you're doing your job or your caregiving responsibilities. So you'll have maybe you'll have a really good months of you have a really good plan, and then something derails, because that's life, and that's completely okay. And then what we do is we learn and we grow, and we find new ways to help us get through it. So I'm just trying to move my little face here so I can see what I'm looking at. Okay, caregiver bill of rights. So I just thought this was really interesting, that we really do have the right. You have the right, in the permit. We're giving you permission to take care of yourself. I have the right to seek help from others, even though my relatives may object. Again, maybe that family conflict, and sometimes that's going to happen. I have the right to maintain facets of my own life that do not include the person I care for. So again, creating those boundaries that we all need for ourselves. I'm kind of just running down the list. So I have the right to be angry and depressed. Again, owning our feelings and allowing ourselves to feel what I think a lot of us think that we can't feel. Like, feeling angry and depressed is something, as soon as we start to feel it, we're like, no, we really shouldn't be feeling this. So we sort of stuff it down, or we hide it. But I think that's more detrimental if we can expose ourselves to what we're feeling and allow that to acknowledge that. We can recognize it and then try to find ways to cope with it. You have the right to reject any attempts by my relative to manipulate me through guilt and or depression. A lot of family issues arise when it's just unfortunate, but it happens to everyone in every family. So it's very common, and there's not, it's not something that you did personally. I have the right to receive consideration, affection, forgiveness, and acceptance from my loved one for what I do, for as long as I offer these qualities in return. I have the right to take pride in what I'm doing, and accomplishing, and to applaud the courage it has sometimes taken to meet the needs of my relative. Yep, very true. Very courageous. It really is a lot of work. I have the right to protect my individuality and my right to make a life for myself that will sustain me in my time when my relative no longer needs my full-time help. When you're done with your caregiver responsibilities, you're going to go back to, what does your life look like? What is your routine? What have you done for yourself that you will, I think a lot of times caregivers think they have to pause their life for an extended amount of time while they're caregiving. And then we all think that we have to, then we just start from that point again. And that's not true. We don't have to pause our lives. Our lives will look different. They will definitely look different. We don't have to stop the things that we love doing or stop taking care of ourselves just because we're taking care of someone else. Again, it's a learning process that we all need to be aware of. And it doesn't come with a manual, so we're all learning. I have the right to expect, did I skip one? I'm going to jump down to the last one. I have the right to expect and demand that as new strides are made in finding resources to aid physically and mentally impaired persons in our country, similar strides will be made towards aiding and supporting caregivers, which I think anyone who's caregiving for someone, especially at home, or even probably in a nursing home, just know that the aging community probably needs a little bit or a lot more community programs for those wanting to stay at home instead of being institutionalized in facilities. So there is a lot. Hopefully, there's a lot of growth that's going to be made in the years to come for our caregivers, for our healthcare workers, for anyone because we are all in this together. So I just thought this was a really good representation of the things that we've been talking about the entire presentation. So I think that's it for that. I think what we have next are some of the resources. Again, happy to please reach out. I'm very happy to share any kind of resources that go beyond this, talk about challenges in your life that you're going through, help as we can. Again, you don't have to be someone who's receiving services from New England Hospice. We love to chat and see how we can help you, connect you to different resources in your community. Again, my name is Liz Rippey, should you want to reach out. And I appreciate everyone coming and watching this, and hopefully we can kind of get through this time together and make that work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Yeah. Were you watching it?
I was, and I just want to let everyone know that it'll be hopefully on our Facebook page, and also hopefully on our website soon.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.